The sun was setting over the dusty plains, its fading light painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The crowd gathered in the old town's auction yard, their boots grinding against the dirt, voices rising in excitement and greed. On the wooden stage stood a young woman, her wrists bound with coarse rope, her face pale beneath the grime, yet her eyes burned with a quiet defiance. She had once been a healer, a woman who had spent her life tending to wounds and saving lives across the frontier. But tonight, she was being sold like livestock. The auctioneer bellowed, "This one ain't for beauty or pleasure, she's a doctor, gentlemen. Knows medicine, herbs, surgery. You get her, you'll have your own personal healer." The crowd murmured with interest. Men who'd seen war, ranch hands who'd been clawed by cattle, outlaws who'd taken bullets, they all understood the value of a doctor. One man shouted, $50. Another called, $75. The numbers climbed, echoing through the dry evening air. Then, a deep voice cut through the chaos, calm, commanding, almost lazy. 200. The crowd turned. A tall cowboy stood in the back, his hat shadowing his face, dust clinging to his long coat. He was silent, unbothered by the murmurs around him. No one dared to outbid him. The auctioneer's hammer came down. Sold. To the cowboy in the black hat. The woman's heart pounded as the ropes were cut. She stumbled slightly, exhausted, but the cowboy didn't grab her or mock her like others had. Instead, he looked at her for a moment, eyes steady and unreadable, then said quietly, "Come on. You're free to walk beside me." She blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Freedom wasn't a word that existed for women sold at auction. Still, she followed, too numb to resist. Outside the town, the air grew cooler. The cowboy's horse waited, strong and silent. He handed her a blanket. "You can ride or walk. Either way, we're leaving this place behind." His voice was low, gentle but firm. For the first time in months, she felt no threat in a man's tone. As they rode out into the open land, the sounds of the auction faded, replaced by the endless whisper of the prairie wind. Hours passed in silence before she finally asked, "Why did you buy me?" He glanced over, the moonlight catching his jawline. "Because you didn't deserve to be up there. And because I need a doctor at my ranch. You help my people, you stay as long as you want. Then you go wherever you wish." Her breath caught. No one had ever offered her a choice before. She looked at the man riding beside her, a stranger who had spent $200 not to own her, but to give her back her life. The moon climbed higher, and the prairie stretched endlessly ahead, like a promise waiting to be kept. The cowboy's name was Jace Dalton, a man with scars that told more stories than his words ever would. His ranch lay far from civilization, surrounded by wild hills and silent fields. When they arrived, his workers watched curiously as he helped the woman down. "She's a doctor," Jace said simply. "And she's under my protection." That was all it took. No one questioned him. Days turned into weeks. She treated injured cattle hands, mended wounds, and delivered a newborn in the middle of a storm. Her gentle hands brought life back into the ranch, and Jace began to notice her laughter returning, faint at first, like sunlight after rain. At night, when the fire crackled, he'd find her gazing at the stars. "You're not meant to live caged," he told her once, voice soft. "When you're ready, I'll ride you to the nearest town myself." She smiled faintly, the first genuine smile in months. "You already did," she whispered. "You freed me the day you didn't treat me like property." As winter drew near, something unspoken grew between them, a bond born not of ownership, but respect. She had healed his men, but he had healed something deeper in her, her belief that goodness still existed in the hearts of men. And yet, deep inside, she knew this peace wouldn't last forever. Rumors were spreading. The bandits who'd once sold her had heard of a woman doctor living under a cowboy's protection. They were coming for her. The story of redemption, courage, and love had only just begun. The sun rose slow and golden over the Dalton Ranch, spreading its warmth across the quiet valley. The woman stepped out of the small cabin Jace had given her, breathing in the crisp morning air. Birds chirped, horses neighed softly, and for a brief moment, the world felt at peace. It had been weeks since the auction, and each morning she still woke with disbelief. No ropes, no chains, no shouts. Only freedom. Jace Dalton kept his word. He never treated her like a servant or a possession. If anything, he treated her like an equal, though his silence often carried a weight she couldn't name. She had grown used to the rhythm of the ranch, the sound of boots on the porch, the smell of fresh bread from the kitchen, and the endless landscape that stretched like a sea of gold. The men respected her now, not just because she was under Jace's protection, but because she had saved lives. When one of the hands fell from a horse and broke his leg, she said it without trembling. When a ranch boy caught a fever, she stayed up all night nursing him. Her steady hands, her calm voice, everything about her spoke of quiet strength. But in the back of her mind, the fear never truly left. Freedom, she had learned, could be fragile. One evening, as the wind picked up and the horizon burned orange, Jace returned from town. His face was harder than usual, jaw clenched, eyes sharp beneath his hat. "We might have trouble," he said simply. She looked up from the herbs she was grinding. "What kind of trouble?" He hesitated, then spoke low. "Words out about you. The men who sold you, they're back in the territory. They're looking for the woman doctor who escaped." Her hands froze. Her heart began to pound. "They think I escaped." Jace nodded. "Let them think that. But they'll come here. And when they do, they won't find you helpless." That night, she barely slept. Memories flashed like lightning, rough hands, mocking laughter, the sound of the auctioneer's hammer. But alongside the fear was a new feeling, resolve. She had lived in fear long enough. She would not be caged again. By morning, the ranch was on alert. Jace's men armed themselves, posting lookouts on the ridge. She moved among them, treating wounds, preparing bandages, setting up a place for the injured before the fight even began. Jace watched her with quiet pride. "You've got more courage than half the men I know," he said. She smiled faintly. "Courage isn't born from choice, Jace. It's born from what we survive." By midday, the danger arrived. A cloud of dust rose on the horizon, 5 riders, mean-looking and fast. They rode with the arrogance of men who believed they owned everything they touched. When they reached the gate, their leader sneered, "We're looking for a woman. A healer. She belongs to us." Jace rode forward, calm as stone. "You've made a mistake," he said. "Ain't no woman here belongs to anyone." The leader spat in the dirt. "You paid for her. That means you bought stolen goods. Hand her over, and maybe we'll forget the insult." The ranch hands raised their rifles. The air grew tight, silent, ready to break. Then, before anyone could speak, she stepped forward. Her hands were steady, though her heart raced. "You want me," she said. "Here I am." Jace's eyes widened. "Don't," he warned softly. But she shook her head. "They'll come again if I hide. Let's end this." The bandit laughed, baring yellow teeth. "That's more like it. Come quietly, and maybe we'll let the cowboy live." Jace's hand went to his revolver. Big mistake. The standoff erupted in gunfire. The first shot cracked the air, echoing across the valley. Horses screamed, men shouted, dust rose. She dropped behind the water trough, grabbing her medical bag. A ranch hand went down, bleeding from his shoulder, and she rushed to him without hesitation. Jace moved like a shadow, every bullet he fired finding its mark. 2 of the bandits fell before they even reached the barn. The leader dismounted, cursing, and charged toward her. "You're coming with me, healer," he shouted. But before he could reach her, Jace tackled him to the ground. The 2 men fought, rolling in the dirt, fists flying. The leader drew a knife, slashing across Jace's arm, but Jace didn't falter. He landed a brutal punch that sent the men sprawling. Then, before the bandit could recover, Jace fired once. The leader fell still. Silence followed, the kind that only comes after death. When the dust settled, the ranch stood safe. A few men were wounded, but alive. Jace's arm bled freely, and she rushed to his side, pressing her hands to the wound. "You fool," she whispered, tears in her voice. "You could have been killed." He smiled weakly. "You'd patch me up anyway." She cleaned and stitched the wound in the soft glow of the setting sun. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had just happened. When she was done, Jace looked at her and said quietly, "You didn't owe me this fight." She met his gaze. And you didn't owe me my freedom. But we both made a choice. Days later, the ranch returned to calm. The dead were buried, the wounded healed, and life went on. Yet something between them had changed. Every glance lingered a little longer, every silence felt heavier. She realized that Jace Dalton hadn't just saved her, he'd believed in her when no one else would. And for a woman who had been sold and silenced, belief was more precious than gold. One night, as they sat by the fire, she spoke softly, "When I first met you, I thought freedom was something you gave me. But now I know, it's something I took back." Jace looked at her, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "Then I reckon you earned it," he said. Subscribe to Chanel.